Get ready to uncover how schools manipulate students' thoughts, stifle their potential, and how politicians steal money in the future of America from kids. Welcome to the JB Sill Show.
Welcome to Operation Anti-Indoctrination. I'm your host, JB, and today, I have a ton of stuff I need to get off my chest. Didn't do a show earlier this week. I don't know why. I don't really know why. Just kind of, I wasn't feeling like doing it, so I've got a lot of built-up energy, a lot of built-up anger at the system, a lot of built-up stuff I want to say. So we're going to get right into it. But basically, the thesis for today's episode is that America is basically on a road to destruction. I don't know if that's going to be by civil war or just by a massive decline that will be unstoppable. But, I mean, look at our country. Look at the absolute state of our country today. Look at the absolute pitiful state of our country where we have... I mean, I didn't live in the 1850s, but this feels like the 1850s. It looks like a civil war is going to happen. It feels like we're a minute away to midnight on the Doomsday clock. This election that's coming up, I don't know who's going to win it. Nobody does. But whoever does... whoever wins, the other side is... It's not going to be pretty. And I wish people could see what's literally right in front of their noses, which is that this is all being caused by the school system. The school system is spearheading this destruction of America that we've seen, this horrible destruction of America. And the entire system itself, the entire modern school system, is predicated upon the false assumption that basically students can be programmed like you would a machine, that they are basically morally perfectible. This goes back to Prussian schooling and the Unitarians in the 1800s. And then to the experimental psychologists of the late 1800s and early 1900s. So this goes way back, but basically the entire modern school system is if we have your brain compute enough information, if we have your brain master enough concepts, learn enough things, that eventually you will become basically perfect. You will become a morally perfected individual, which can be then crafted for the use of a utopia, so that the people can serve their masters in a sort of 1984 way. But basically, this system is tearing the country apart. Because what's the first thing you need to do in order to create this mass utopia, this mass system where we're going to have everyone is going to be mastering these concepts, and everyone's going to be free of emotion, free of any irrational thought. Everyone's going to be perfectly rational, perfectly like a machine, like a robot. What's the first thing you need to do? Well, you need to destroy the family. How do you destroy the family? Well, how about you take kids while they're young, while they're 5 years old, you rip them apart from their mothers and fathers for 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day. You put them in schools with teachers where these teachers are filling their head with garbage, and at the same time are turning kids into materialistic beings. Now, when you're materialistic, you want as much stuff as possible. And so now the whole concept of a child and their parents is basically, how much stuff can you give me? How many Lego sets can you buy me? And if you can buy me lots, then I'll love you. And if you can't buy me anything, well, then I'm going to hate you and we're going to have a terrible relationship. And that is the first byproduct of this absolutely reprehensible system, is that it is destroying the family. You can see now, if you look, the single motherhood rate is upwards of 40% in the black community. It's 70-some%. In Hispanics, it's like 60%. And the only one it's low for, I think, is Asians. It's actually a somewhat reasonable number. Still too high, but it's a somewhat reasonable number for Asians. But for everyone else, it's off the charts. This is unheard of. It wasn't as bad for blacks during slavery as it is now. This is so insane. So that's the first thing you do. And that, again, because now you have, first of all, you have boys that have no masculinity, no testosterone. And that is one of the most important building blocks of a society, is that you have strong men. As the saying goes, strong men create good times create weak men, and on and on and on. And right now we're getting to those bad times where it's caused by the weak men. And the absence of fathers is a major cause of that. And then the next thing you need to do is basically dumb the people down, because if the people are ever able to think for themselves, they will revolt, they will rise up against their overlords, their utopian overlords, in order to overthrow the system. Now, how do you dumb people down? Well, one of the most sure ways you can dumb them down is by making them illiterate. So basically, you teach them to read completely incorrectly, and that's what we do with whole word. Or, and this might even be better in some cases, You do kind of teach them how to read, but you make the process as horrible and as laborious and painful as possible that basically they'll never open a book up in their lives. So that you have permanently shut off their brain from any kind of learning. Now, the same thing goes for math, because as we're often told, math is reasoning. But in school, we're taught that math is memory. It's a game of memory. Can you remember this equation? Can you remember the solution to this problem? And if you can memorize it, then basically you're good. Now, this makes kids hate math with a passion. I've seen it. We've all seen it. No one likes math, right? I don't know how anyone does. But basically, the way we teach math right now makes kids hate it with an absolute passion. They detest it. They despise it. They would rather do anything else than go to math class. They'd rather jump off a bridge. They hate it so much. And again, this is how you dumb people down. And then, after you've done that, one more thing, after you've also broken their creativity, you've broken their creativity with little public humiliations. You've broken their creativity by making them memorize all this crap, by filling their heads with garbage. After you've done all that, then you indoctrinate them into believing in these systems of power, into believing that I guess these elites should continue to wield this massive power, that these corporations are so great. You indoctrinate them, and then maybe while you're at it, if there's conflicting agendas, you can also indoctrinate them into socialism. And it's part of the reason. Another part of the reason, of course, is that that people support socialism, that young people support socialism, is that we are no longer a capitalist society. We are a completely corporate society, because every year the school pumps out millions upon millions of kids who know basically nothing, because they've been so dumbed down. It's not their fault, but they've been so dumbed down that they know basically nothing. They have no real skills. They cannot account for themselves. So then they get hired by all these massive corporations. And that's why it's so easy to create these massive companies. Is it any coincidence? Let me ask you this. Is it any coincidence that the first massive corporations, Standard Oil probably being the most famous, Carnegie Steel, started popping up just as public schools started expanding throughout the entire nation? New England, then out west to California, then down south. While that was happening, directly corresponding with that was basically the invention of these massive corporations, these billionaires like Rockefeller. I'm not saying that there should be no billionaires, but I'm saying that basically the school system creates a ready labor force. And by the way, that's why adoption exists, because you had to get the kids away from the parents so the parents would stay working in the factories. But that's a whole other story. But basically, you needed workers, and what better way to do that than by dumbing the population down in one of the biggest social engineering schemes ever thought of. Another reason we are on the brink right now is the erosion of discipline. We are now a hedonistic society where all that matters is what's happening right now. That's all that matters. Nothing that will happen in a year, certainly not 5 or 10 years, matters. We have no sense of delayed gratification. We just have this. And again, this is because we have become completely devoid, and also our culture and our media encourage this sort of thing. It's cool. It's cool to do drugs. It's cool to do suicide. It's cool to be depressed. All this stuff. So basically, you have this society which encourages these behaviors, which encourages hedonism of living in the moment, purely in the moment, instead of happiness, instead of actual happiness, instead of actual freedom. Because how on earth are you free if you're addicted to drugs? You're addicted to some other stuff. How on earth are you free? You're a slave to your own desires, but that's freedom now. That's maximum liberty, right? Maximum liberty is you're doing drugs all day somehow. I don't know how that happened, but basically, that's what we've become to as a society. Now, on the family is probably the worst of all of this. The family is probably the worst thing the school system has done, because there's nothing more important than it. And by the way, this goes way back to Plato. Plato was very much against the family. He believed that the family was a reason for all evil, and then that goes way down the line to psychologists like Sigmund Freud, Freudian theory. Marx was very much against the family. So that's all come to it. It's amazing how close we are to this collective ideal that was literally envisioned by the fathers of communism. Plato, Freud, Marx, they were completely against the family. They thought it was the root of all evil. Family and religion was the root of all evil, and that is, of course, promoted in our school system, because the school system is destroying the family. It makes kids into materialists who only care what their parents can buy for them, and it completely degrades the relationship. It makes kids, oh, it's mom, gosh, it makes kids completely hate their parents in a lot of cases, and it's reciprocal. The parents hate the kids because the kids are, brats. Not that it's their fault, but they're not the best either. And I can kind of speak from experience here. Just, I'm pretty young. I'm in the same boat as everyone else in the school system. I'm in the same boat, basically. The only difference is I actually know what's happening. And of course, when you have no critical thinking, you're going to have very little innovation. You're going to have very little changes in society, very little positive change, where you're not progressing really as a society, except for a few select people that somehow get around it, that drop out of college, like Bill Gates, for instance, that don't like college, that don't want to go through this insanity of having their brains be dumbed down. They don't want to go through all this, and so they make the great escape. They make the escape from it, and then they create the massive companies which employ all the people that didn't make the great escape. It's a wonderful system, isn't it? It's a wonderful, again, it's not capitalism. It's not It's not a market economy of any kind. It's a corporate economy and literally the school system is a product of elite private universities and companies plus the government colluding to basically control the people in some crazy Orwellian totalitarian state. It's pretty interesting how it all works. And it's what's been created is basically a consumerist culture. What I would like to do here is to quote from a book that I am reading, fantastic book by John Taylor Gatto. I've read a lot of his books, but this is a different kind of teacher. Now, I'd like to quote what he says, this is what would happen if somehow the system went away. He says, quote, "Think of the economic tragedy that would occur if schools taught critical thinking. If they encouraged individuals to be strong and to think original thoughts, if they taught the philosopher's secret that nothing is important can be bought, if they honored the universal human need for choice and privacy, if they nourished a love of quality, who would crave the mountains of junk our mass production economy distributes? Who would eat the processed food? Who would wear the plastic shoes? Who would fill the evenings with televised fantasies in place of living? How could the mass economy survive without the training of schools provide? We'll never get a handle on school reform until we understand this strange symbiosis better." Unquote. So basically, the school system has changed our economy. We're not a capitalist society. We're something very different. We're not a communist society either. It's very much a corporate economy. It's very much an economy that's controlled by a elite. That's both the government and the corporations. So what they've done is it's very ingenious what they've done. They've pitted the left and the right against each other. Because the left always talks about big corporations, and the right always talks about big government. But it's both. They're both the problem. It's that simple. And they both colluded through the school system to oppress the people. It's not one of them. One of them is not the enemy. They're both the enemy. They're both destroying this country. And again, there was at one point a time in our history, before all this schooling craziness, when there were no massive corporations and when the government was very small, because there was a certain amount of virtue and there was a certain amount of real freedom. Of course, we had other problems at that time too, but before schooling, you did have a inventiveness that was going around like a wildfire. You had, and it came from all sorts of places. It did not come from Harvard University or Yale or any of the Ivy League schools. It came from everywhere. It came from average Americans who were working hard to better their society, who wanted to truly make a difference. It was not coming from all these massive entities. And even today, most innovations don't come from Amazon or Microsoft. They come from kids, practically speaking. They come from teens. They come from hobby. They come from people who are doing this as a hobby. They don't come from certainly don't come from school labs, and in most cases, they don't even come from any kind of academic or scientific lab. They come from everywhere. even today. It's amazing how some of this inventiveness has still survived. But just to show how terrible the schooling has been for the people, it's often thought that basically we've been on an upward spiral of prosperity over the last 100 years. But again, I'm going to quote from Gatto in this book again. He says, quote, "Out of Johns Hopkins in 1996 came this chilling news. The American economy has grown massively since the mid-1960s, but workers' real spendable wages are no higher than they were 30 years ago." That's from the book Fat and Mean by David Gordon about the significance of corporate downsizing. During the boom of the economy of the 1980s and 1990s, purchasing power rose for 20% of the population and actually declined about 13% for the other 80%. Indeed, after inflation is factored in, purchasing power of a working couple in 1995 is only 8% greater than for a single working man in 1905. This steep decline in common prosperity over 90 years has forced both parents from many homes and deposited their kids into the management systems of daycare and extended schooling, unquote. So again, you have the destruction of the family here. Destruction of the family into this massive corporate economy, and I could go into adoption here too. The entire adoption system was made so that basically kids would be funneled out of working families, so that the families would work for the rest. They'd become wage slaves. They'd work for the rest of their lives. So it's a massive scheme, and again, this is destroying our country. You look at the violence that's happening. You look at it's manifested itself in politics, in the traditional left versus right politics, where you have sides that are literally at each other's throats. I mean, we're gonna kill each other. This is not gonna end well, guys. And again, we are a minute to midnight on the clock, and I don't know what happens when we're gonna hit midnight, but I don't really want to find out. But it's coming, and unless something changes, well, no country lives forever. No country survives forever. So we're gonna have to do something to take it back. Americans are gonna have to do something. Real Americans. And that's why I need to share this video. That's right. Share it. I think my voice is getting a little hoarse. That kind of sucks. I don't know what's going on there, but you gotta share the video. Yep. We gotta get the word out. And if you have any questions, you can email me if you want some more. If you want more in-depth explanations, you can email me. My email is jbsillsshow@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media down below. I never use it, but also my arm is broken, so it's kind of hard to do a whole lot of typing because I do most of it on my computer. But anyway, yeah. So that's about it. So please do leave a like if you're on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. You can share the video with your mother, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, and until next time, I've been your host, JB. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye! Also, take action. You must take action. Be brave. That's right.